you could be missing out on building deep trust with your audience simply because you were scripting the wrong way. Most podcasters believe they need to script their episode word for word to make sure that they don't make any mistakes, and it makes their life easier when it comes to editing. But actually, it makes it really hard for your listener to connect with you when you are reading from a script. And in this episode, I'm sharing with you my script framework to make sure that you are scripting properly and that you're not missing out on those connections with your person. This is the same framework that I share with my students inside of my coaching program, the Profitable Podcast Blueprint. So first things first, I am not a big fan of scripting. I believe that you should speak from the heart, because if I came to you and I asked you for help in what it is that you do, you wouldn't go write a script and then read it to me. You would just counsel me right then and there because you know your stuff. And I find that podcasters lean on a podcast script because it gives them security and they're not going to go off on tangents. Now listen, I myself, if I don't have something to ground me, I will for sure go off on tangents. So much so that not long ago, I was listening to a podcast episode of mine and I'm like, what did I say here? I spoke a lot, but I don't know what I said because it was all over the place. So I understand that on the flip side, just riffing completely can also hurt you. So what I recommend that you do is that you have a mixed approach. Now, in the last episode, I shared with you that you should absolutely have a hook that lets people know that your episode is for them within the first 15 seconds. And that is one place that I think you should spend time on and think about before you ever hit record, because if the first 15 seconds are not hitting the mark, people are just going to bounce. Now, one time I was listening to this podcast episode and I don't know who the podcaster was, but I was specifically there for the guest. Now, if you haven't listened to the episode where I talk about solo versus interview format, make sure that you go check that out. But long story short, I was trying to really listen to this episode, but I kid you not, it was literally 10 minutes before the host actually got into the episode. So I totally believe that when you have a hook for the beginning of your episode, it can actually help with the retention rate of your podcast. And for anything like me, you are likely to go off on tangents that do nothing for you or your listeners. So to avoid that, script your intro. And by script, I don't mean that you actually need to read from a script, although absolutely you can if it makes it easier for you. But you can just write something down, memorize it, practice it a couple of times, and then start your podcast episode. Now, once you go done with your intro, which again, I break that down in the last episode, then after the intro, obviously you want to go into the body of the episode itself. Now, when you segue into the episode itself, instead of reading from a script, I highly recommend that you just rely on bullet points, because bullet points truly is the best of both worlds, meaning you get to have framework to your episode, but also it allows you to speak from the heart and it allows you to highlight your expertise. Because another thing too that people don't understand is that you think you are doing a very good job at reading your script, but people know. And if they don't know that you are scripting, something's just off, and it's really hard to connect with somebody when you are reading from a script. And the other thing too is that if you are on YouTube and you are looking at the script and looking at the camera and looking at the script and looking at the camera, it's going to be very distracting. So let's get away from scripting word for word and focus on those bullet points. Now, before you even sit down to put down your bullet points for your episode, you need to ask yourself, what is the one transformation that I need my person to get out of this podcast episode? Because what you don't want is to make this episode that is full of big ideas and full of transformation and full of everything that is going to overwhelm your person and just send them away feeling like, okay, this is not for me. So instead of giving the whole kitchen sink in your podcast episode, just make sure that you have one transformation. And by the way, the transformation doesn't have to be this huge breakthrough. It can literally be a micro transformation. And that needs to be like your North Star as you sit down to plan out this podcast episode. What is the one transformation I want my person to have? And then from there, you can start to jot down your bullet points. Now, I recommend that you have 3 to 5 bullet points and that you don't go too far into the bullet point land, because then your podcast episode can get very heavy and just too much. And remember, you are a podcaster and you're doing this, you're committed. So you don't have to put all of the information inside of one podcast episode. You can do a series. You can talk about part of something today, and then like later on in a month, you can revisit and do a part 2 or whatever. But the point is, don't feel like your one episode needs to be this transformational thing that completely changes your person's life. It can literally be just one thing that gives them that aha moment that keeps them hooked and coming back for more. Another thing that you want to make sure that you are bulleting is that somewhere on there, you have a way for people to know to come work with you. So for example, while I'm not doing a hard pitch on my own episodes, I am telling people I have this program, I have coaching clients, I own a podcast marketing production agency. So people are like, oh, okay, like she does this thing and I actually have this problem. I'm going to reach out to her. So I have always been a big fan of letting people know that they can come and work with you. So make sure that if you're going to do a softer pitch or you're going to do a harder pitch, that you are letting people know that they can come and work with you, because you don't want people to just come and listen to your episode and be motivated and inspired, but not know that they can actually take the next big step with you. So make sure that you let people know, hey, I actually got your back and we can move mountains if we work together. That needs to be the vibe when you are recording your episodes. Finally, make sure that your episodes are on the shorter side. If your podcast episode is 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes long, that is great. If it doesn't have to be longer than that, then it doesn't have to be longer than that. I feel like a lot of podcasters feel this pressure to have these really long-winded episodes because that is what the majority of podcasters are doing. But here's the thing. These big podcasters, they have ads and sponsors on their shows. And the more ad spots they have, the better off they are, the more money they make. Now, if you are a business owner and you are using your podcast as a funnel to your business, you really don't have to have this really long-winded podcast episode. Then most likely people are not going to listen to the full thing anyway, because you are monetizing your podcast with your own products and your services. So you really don't need to have this long episode. Concise is better, especially because people just don't have attention spans these days. So capitalize on that and do not go over 20 minutes. And if you are doing interviews, then make sure that you're not going over the 45-minute range. And remember, if you have something bigger, a bigger idea that you need to break down in your podcast episode, whether you're doing a solo or an interview episode, you can always break those up into a series. And finally, you always want to give your person a next step. So for me personally, I'm letting them know, hey, go listen to the next episode. For you, it might be go listen to the next episode. Hey, come work with me. Whatever it is, give them a next step on something that they can do to keep them in your realm, in your space, absorbing more views, so that by the time they hop on a call with you or by the time they jump on a sales page, they're like, oh my gosh, I am sold. I've been binging this person's content and I love it and I'm so ready to buy. And please don't wait until the end or your outro to tell people to come work with you, because most people are not listening to the end. So make sure that you are letting people know that they can come work with you in the first half of your episode. So now that we know how to structure your podcast for success, we have to overcome the next big hurdle, which is getting your episodes to be listened to in the first place. And the way that we do that is by focusing on titles. And that is exactly what I'm breaking down in this video right here.